and thank you for joining me here today at Why the Book Wins. My name is Laura, and today I will be tier ranking the romantic relationships in Gilmore Girls. I just finished watching the show for the first time ever, and I wanted to make some Gilmore Girls related content, so here we are. And so my tier rankings are the top one being perfect match, followed by they can make it work. And then they seem happy, which is for relationships that we don't see much of, but based on the limited time we do see this couple, they seem happy. And then couples that bring out the worst in each other, and then couples that are just like horrible for one reason or another and are toxic, which is such like a cliche term to use for relationships, but regardless, I'm using it. So kicking things off with Sookie and Jackson. So this is a tough one because on one hand, they're a great match, right? Like she's a cook, he's a farmer, they have cute banter, they love each other, they have their own quirks, which they embrace. And so they are very supportive of each other. And they do seem like they're good parents. And by the way, I'm going to be getting into spoilers in this video, starting right now, because in season 7, Sookie gets pregnant, even though she had thought Jackson had got a vasectomy, but then he's like, actually, I've been lying to you, and you were on the pill, so I didn't think it mattered. So she gets pregnant because she assumed he got that surgery when really he had been lying. So that is just so horrible, right? And it's hard to say, because on one hand, I want to say they're a perfect match, because up until season 7, they were. And Sookie is a side character, but she's like a big enough character that we do see the details of this relationship. And there are other like issues that come up even before this season 7 one. So it's not like they're a basic couple that we see nothing. You know, we don't see any drama. Like we do see some of the drama and they work through it. But yeah, that season 7 one, like, maybe I should say they can make it work because they seem like a perfect match and they do make it through that vasectomy thing. You know, she forgives him, even though she has a hard time forgiving him. But, you know, he allows her that space that she needs and she ultimately realizes that she loves him enough that they stick it out, of course. So yeah, I want to put them in perfect match, but lying to someone about that gets them bumped down a whole nother level. And now Tristan isn't a romantic, you know, he never dates Rory, but he is very interested in her and they do kiss at one point. But Tristan, I do not like at all. Saying he's toxic maybe seems a bit much, but he just pesters her and pesters her. He does not take no for an answer. And when they kiss, it's when she's feeling vulnerable because she has just broken up with Dean and she's feeling really upset about it and she still loves Dean. And he also is just like such a jerk when Dean does come to the dance. And man, yeah, I just really don't like Tristan. I know a lot of people do, partly because he's played by Chad Michael Murray, but I don't like him at all, and I'm so glad he and Rory never got together because he was just bad news, and he was just a jerk and a bully and wouldn't take no for an answer. And now Rory and Logan. I know there's people who are fans of Logan, but I really didn't like him right from the start. He's just so rich and pretentious, and his friends Colin and Finn too. I just hated them. I did not find them funny or amusing. They are just rich, spoiled brats who are used to getting their way. And again, the whole life and death brigade, when Lorelai is talking to Rory about that, she's saying like how ridiculous it is and how pretentious they are. And Rory gets defensive, being like, no, like it's more than just that. But it's like, no, they're just rich people who can spend money on ridiculous things and they think they're so unique and fun, when it's like, no, you're just a rich person who can do whatever you want and it just makes you annoying. But then he cheats on her and he tells her like, hey, I thought we were broken up, so it wasn't cheating because I thought we were broken up. In order to break up, both people need to be aware that you have broken up. That's such a horrible excuse, right? Being like, oh, I didn't mean to cheat on you. I just thought we were broken up because we had a fight. Like, that's just such a horrible excuse, and it's so manipulative, and it's like, it gives the person a free pass to do what they want if they claim like, well, I thought we were broken up. And it's like, what? She didn't think you were broken up, so clearly you didn't break up if both parties didn't realize it. Just because you have a fight doesn't mean the relationship is over. And so the fact that he plays that off as his excuse, and Rory convinces Rory, she's like, oh, you know, like, you're right. Like, you know, he thought we were broken up. It's not his fault. So yeah, the way he gaslights her with that whole thing. But also, I didn't like his storyline being like, hey, like, I'm a player. I don't do relationships and you can't tie me down. But then Rory wins him over. It's like a wish fulfillment fantasy for a girl, right? Being able to tie down the guy who's a player and likes to sleep around, but then he'll commit for you. You're the one that changes him. So I also don't like that trope. And then also he's just a bad influence on Rory, which on one hand, it's like, of course she's gonna have a phase where she likes to party and drink. Like, I feel like people give Rory a hard time for that phase she goes through, and it's like, it's pretty normal to be college age and to suddenly like to drink and party. But then even though I feel like that's normal for college kids to go through that phase, Logan is the one that brings that out in her. So he's not like he doesn't really inspire the best in her. And then when all is said and done, in A Year in the Life, he is engaged to someone else, but they are sleeping together. And so that's not romantic. That's just bad on both of them, right? So in some ways, they bring out the worst in each other, because she's not a good person when she's with him a lot of the time, right? Which granted, they are together for like 3 seasons or something, and he does have his merits. He can be thoughtful, and he does encourage her in the positive ways to some degree. But yeah, I don't know. I just don't really like him. So I am going to say that they bring out the worst in each other. And sorry if this video is kind of rambly. I don't have any script I'm basing this off of. I'm just saying whatever comes into my head. Anyway, next up we have Jason Stiles, aka Digger. He and Lorelai were definitely very different, but I thought they could have made it work. They had differences, I thought, that kind of balanced each other out. And people give him a hard time being like, he made Lorelai sleep in a separate bedroom. So he's a light sleeper. Like, some people have a hard time sleeping with someone else in the room. I don't feel like that's a huge deal. You know, she had her own room and it was a sweet setup. It's not like he kicked her out of the house. But yeah, I liked them together. And even though the first date had so many awkward moments, I feel like had the dad not screwed over Jason, which that was like the biggest jaw-dropping moment for me in the show, was that reveal. When the dad is golfing and we find out that he has organized this whole thing to set Jason up, and now Jason is going to take the fall, and just seeing how heartless Richard was in that moment. And then yeah, Jason wants to sue Richard, but can you blame him? Like, for what he did? That was horrible. So, and then also later he comes into the inn and he's just being super like possessive of Lorelai. Like, Luke comes in and he claims that he and Lorelai are still dating even though they're not. So that was kind of annoying and awkward, but obviously Luke and Lorelai were destined to be together. So if it hadn't been for that and it hadn't been for the business stuff, I think they could have made it work. I thought they were a good couple for the most part. And now we have Lorelai and Max from season 1, the teacher who she starts, Rory's teacher who she starts dating, which the fact that he was Rory's teacher, they should have waited to date until like Rory left his class the following year. So that's kind of awkward. But aside from that, I'm tempted to say, they could have made it work. I liked her and Jason more than her and Max, but I do think ultimately, like, if she'd stuck it out with Max, I think they could have made it work. Like, they may not have had that spark, but I thought they were a cute couple, and I honestly don't have too much to say about him, but I liked him, and they could have made it work if she really wanted to. Oh, for some reason I have 2 pictures of Logan. This is the one from the Life and Death Brigade. Anyway, this next one is Luke, I believe, although he is cut off, so I'm sorry for that, Luke. But obviously Luke and Lorelai are a perfect match. And the whole show, you're just waiting for them to get together. And once they get together, you're just waiting for them to get married. And the fact that April coming into his life causes him to be like, I need to wait and see how you fit with me and April. And she's like, no, you need to see how April fits in with us. Like, not the other way around. And I totally agree with her. Like, he still should have prioritized Lorelai. You know, I get it's his daughter, but he just realized he had a daughter suddenly, right? That shouldn't have stopped him from marrying Lorelai. And Lorelai was great with April, but then he was jealous, being like, once she meets you, she's gonna like you so much more, and then she won't like me anymore. So that's why he keeps Lorelai separate from April for so long. But anyway, the whole April drama was kind of frustrating because all it did was just delay Luke and Lorelai getting together and just add more drama, which is the whole point of a TV show. I get it. Anyway, what I'm saying is Luke and Lorelai were destined to be together. I love them together. I thought they were a cute couple. Bad communication skills, which comes up in A Year in the Life, but Luke, not the best communicator. But I loved the episode when he does the self-help book. And I like that they were showing self-help in a positive way and not making fun of it, even though Lorelai does make fun of it. But yeah, self-help can actually make a difference in people's lives. And some people do need it. And then Jess obviously reads it as well. Anyway, I love Luke and Lorelai together. And I was so happy to see them finally get married in A Year in the Life. Although the wedding, like, they go in the middle of the night and do it. Like, why not just wait to have an official wedding scene the next day? So I thought that was a weird filming choice, but regardless. Oh, and now here we have Marty and Rory. Saying it's toxic probably seems overdramatic. I just really don't like Marty though. Like, okay, Rory is kind of naive, being like, oh, we're just friends. Like, he doesn't like me. We're just friends. Let's watch Duck Soup together and blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of like, okay, Rory, obviously he likes you. So you are kind of leading him on to some extent. And then the awkward, so uncomfortable when they go out to dinner with Logan and his friends and Marty can't afford it. So I feel bad for Marty in some situations, but at the same time, like, she doesn't like you. move on, get over it. Don't be mad at her just because she doesn't have a crush on you, right? And then the super awkward when he's dating Lucy, I think, the friend, and he acts like he and Rory have never met before. So weird, so awkward. And they never had an actual relationship. If Rory had liked him, they could have probably had a good relationship, I guess, but he would have been the type, I think, that would have gotten pretty jealous, which all of these guys get so jealous over Rory and Lorelai, which I'm kind of all over the place, but Chris and Luke both get so jealous of each other, but in some ways you can't blame them because she lies to Luke about the times she hangs out with Chris. And so if she was just more honest, then Luke wouldn't have had to have been jealous, right? So honesty could have solved that whole problem. And I feel like he wouldn't have been jealous because he would have known that Lorelai was at least being honest and open with him, you know? And also she should have limited her time with Chris. Like when his dad died and she went over to go get drunk with him, she shouldn't have done that. I know they were a big part of each other's lives, but when you have history like that and when you're currently engaged to another guy, you shouldn't go drink with this guy that you used to be dating, you know, that you have a child with. Like, you got to put some boundaries on that relationship. Anyway, now Zack and Lane. So Zack and Lane, to say that they can make it work seems harsh. Like, it seems like they should be in perfect match since they do end up together and they honestly don't have too much drama. Like, I feel like they are a good match. And we'll get to it, but everybody just hates Zack because he's not Dave, right? But even though he's not Dave, I still think they're a good match. He respects Mrs. Kim, which is important, and he embraces all of Mrs. Kim's quirks, and they share the passion of music, of course. And then people get upset that he went on tour in season 7, even though Lane couldn't go. But if the touring band needed a drummer, then yeah, maybe he could have stayed behind and Lane could have gone. But they didn't need a drummer. They needed a guitarist. So I think it was a good call to at least just have Zack go. So yeah, anyway, I think they're a cute couple. Oh, also when he gets jealous because the one guy writes a song called Lane and he hadn't written a song called Lane and then he messes up the whole gig when the recording studio was there. Obviously, that was messed up of him. But nobody's perfect, and sometimes we make huge mistakes, and that was a huge mistake he did. So I have forgiven him for that, and I think he and Lane are good together. And now Lorelai and Chris. So I think, honestly, they could have made it work, which I'm saying Lorelai, like, I guess her serious relationships weren't with anyone. Wait, actually, what am I saying? Okay, I have multiple thoughts on Chris. On one hand, I think I would put them in They Can Make It Work based on season 7 when they get married. And I feel like they could have made it work. You know, I thought they had a nice thing going on at that point. Chris was more mature by then and he was learning how to balance, you know, Gigi and, you know, staying with Lorelai and getting closer to Rory. I think if they had moved out of Stars Hollow and not been around Luke, I think that relationship would have worked and Lorelai eventually would have gotten over Luke and it all would have been fine. So based on season 7, Chris, I think they could have made it work. However, Chris from season 1 to 6, like in that sense, like almost maybe toxic because, I mean, he abandoned Lorelai and Rory for one, and he doesn't really make too much of an effort with Rory up until a certain time period. But even then, it's like just very sporadic. And then the most frustrating scene is at Sookie's wedding, I believe, when he's committing to Lorelai and Rory and Emily and everyone is just so happy. But then he finds out that his ex is pregnant and so he's going to get back with her. Like, you don't need to get back with her just because she's pregnant. Like, you can still be part of that child's life and stay with Lorelai, you know? Like, you don't need to be with another woman just because she's having your baby. Like, if you've already committed to someone else that you actually love, like, you can be a part of a child's life, basically, even if you're not married to the mother or the father. So anyway, I thought that was a dumb excuse for him to not get with Lorelai. Yeah, so this is tough because I wish I could break him up between seasons because season 7, yeah, I think they could have made it work. But Lorelai, they would have to leave Stars Hollow because I think if Lorelai stayed around Luke, she wouldn't have been able to get over him, which obviously they get together anyway. But for now, I'm going to say they bring out the worst in each other, which is kind of true. They're not exactly the best influence. So as I was editing this, I was realizing I was way too nice to Chris in this video because even in season 7, I didn't like how he didn't understand how much it would hurt both Lorelai and Rory for them to get married without Rory being there. And he also gets all pouty when they have to pick up Emily up from the jail and he says how like, now this overshadows the special drive-in night he had done for Lorelai. And well, I think they did have some good moments and part of me thinks that over time, they could have stayed together. In the end, I just don't think they were the best pair, ultimately. And just because you've known someone for so much of your life, it doesn't mean that they're the best choice. Oh, and then Luke and, I didn't even write down her name, Nancy or something. We don't really see enough of them. We know they get married on that cruise, though. I'm going to say they seem happy, even though they get divorced. But I feel like, again, if Lorelai and Luke weren't destined to be together, then this character, the minimal information we know about her, like, yeah, they seem happy. We don't even see them get married or divorced. It all happens like between seasons. So we don't really even see any drama between them. And now on to Dave and Lane. Dave and Lane were, of course, a perfect match. And honestly, okay, I know Adam Brody had to leave to go do the OC. I think they should have just recast Dave. So keep that character, just get a different actor. People don't like it when the actors change, but so what? Dave was a good enough character that they should have kept him in. Just hire a new actor who kind of resembles Adam Brody. But yeah, he was just so dedicated to Lane and clearly cared about her so much. And he read the Bible all in one night so that he could figure out what Mrs. Kim was talking about, and he was willing to go along with like the funny way they had to date because Lane had to keep it a secret, but he liked her enough that he went along with it while also being just so respectful to Mrs. Kim and winning her over. And he was just a great guy. And they had the shared passion again with music. And yeah, it's just, everybody finds it so heartbreaking that the two of them couldn't have been together because they were like the best couple on the whole show. And they only lasted like half a season or something. But next up, oh, poor Dean, his head is chopped off. But this is Dean. So he is another character that I wish I could split up between seasons because like seasons 1 and 2, and I guess part of 3, like, yeah, he could get kind of angry, like when Rory doesn't say I love you back and he gets upset and breaks up with her over it, like, okay. But he was a teenager too, right? So you can't expect them to act in these mature ways when they're literally high schoolers that are dating. But I thought for the most part, like, he was just always so supportive of Rory. And did they share the same passions like with reading and stuff? No. But he was still super supportive of her and he would like make an effort to read the books that she loved. And when she wanted to go to the book fair, he hung out and was there with her even if it wasn't the thing that he loved. And he also respected the bond between Lorelai and Rory. And yeah, honestly, I think he was a pretty decent boyfriend. And the way she was into Jess when they were still together, like the whole thing when Jess bids on her basket and she goes off with Jess being like, sorry, he bought it. What can I do? If she'd actually cared about Dean, she would have been like, no. Obviously, Jess was just being such a jerk, right? Like trying to win her over, but in such a jerky way. So she should have been like, no, I'm not going to do that just because you bought my basket. I'm not going to go out with you. I'm dating Dean. So anyway, she should have had more respect for him. But obviously she was falling for Jess and her heart took over. But then we have later on, what season is it? Like 5 or something, when Dean is married and the two of them start sleeping together even though he is married. And he pulls a Logan where he tells her like, oh, the marriage is over, so I can sleep with you. And she believes him. And Logan did the same thing, being like, oh, I thought we were broken up. And so he tells Rory like, oh, the marriage is over. We both know it. But Lindsay doesn't know it. She thinks they're fine. So basically, if someone tells you like, oh, me and so, like we're over, unless you have like proof, like if they're still living together in Dean and Lindsay's case, then be like, until you guys move out and separate, then I'm not going to believe you. Anyway, so that Dean, he was manipulative and not good. But then the older Dean, the original Dean, I think they were a better match. But part of me wants to say like they can make it work. But I'm thinking again of when they're younger. A relationship that starts when you're cheating though, which is how the relationship ends up going, I feel like that's always bad news. So I guess ultimately, because you can't not think about where things led. So ultimately, I'm going to say they bring out the worst in each other because he cheated on his wife with her, you know? And then obviously like Rory, maybe that impacted her because then later on, Logan was engaged, but she still slept with him anyway. So maybe this experience made her not really value committed relationships and think that they weren't a big deal and she could sleep with the men anyway, right? So I feel like it did bring out the worst in Rory, you know? And then we have Jamie, who Paris dated, and she treated him so poorly because she ended up falling for another guy. But when they were together, I thought they could have made it work. When someone dates Paris, obviously they need to embrace her intensity. And yeah, they were both young and smart, and he checked Zack before going out to a restaurant, which was very important to her, and he didn't even know that. So yeah, anyway, I think they could have made it work. Like, yeah, he's a very bland character. We don't see too much about him, but I'm going to say they could have made it work. And now we have this first lady that Luke dated, Rachel, I think, which we see her in season 1. They had dated previously and then they broke up and then she comes back and they reignite things. But then she leaves because she can see that he's into Lorelai. But again, I'm going to say they seem happy because we don't see a ton of her. Well, that's not true. I'm going to say they could have made it work. If Luke and Lorelai didn't have the bond that they have, and if she didn't see that they both like each other, even though they weren't saying anything. If it wasn't for that, then yeah, I think they could have made it work. Kirk. You know, she like wanted to explore the world and he didn't, but at this point she says that she's done exploring and she wants to settle down. So they could have been a good match had he not been into Lorelai at the time. Oh, and then Chris and Sherry. I kind of want to say they seem happy. I don't think they're like a great couple, but I think, again, they seem happy. And then, of course, they break up, but then they get back together when he finds out she's pregnant, and then she abandons him, but then she comes back into his life at the end again. Yeah, I think they seem happy, and I'll just leave it at that. Emily&Richard, perfect match. But I will say this is the only couple that we meet when they have been married for like 35 years. All of these other couples we see in the early stages, right? In the early stages has the most drama because you're trying to figure out this person. Granted, relationships, they have a cycle, right? Where it's like you're getting in the flow of things and enjoying time together. And then you get in a rut and then you get unhappy and then you like get resentful of the person. But then if you work on it, then you are happy again and get in the flow and love being around each other. But then that can lead to getting in a rut, which leads you to not like the person and be unhappy. So it constantly takes work, right? And the relationships go through these cycles through the decades. So we do see them have some hiccups in their relationship and they even separate. So we do see the ups and downs, but it is different because we meet them once they've been married for 35 years. However, I'm going to say they are a perfect match. Although the whole thing with Richard seeing his ex like every month for lunch for 30 years and not telling Emily, like that's horrible. Is it as horrible as Sookie being lied to about Jackson's vasectomy? I guess it's not as bad, but it's still pretty bad. He wasn't cheating on her. They weren't having sex, but they were getting lunch every single month. And that is just so messed up. So it's almost tempting to put them in They Can Make It Work. But I don't know. Ultimately, they stayed together for 50 years and every couple has its lows and its highs. So I'm keeping them in perfect match. Also, Emily, I just really, really, really dislike her character. She has some high moments and moments where you like her, and A Year in the Life ends on a positive note, but so often throughout the whole show, including A Year in the Life, there were so many times where she made me so mad. So she is one of my least favorite characters. But regardless, I'm going to say her and Richard are a perfect match. And then we have Jess, who again, I wish we could separate out into seasons, because when he is first introduced to the show, seasons 2 and season 3, I did not like him. Like, yeah, he and Rory share the bond of books, and seeing him and Rory in Paris talking together was a great scene. I wish we got more of that. But he's just such a jerk, and once he and Rory are together, she's like trying to get him to do something with her, but he's like, nah, I don't want to. And she's like, you came to the dance marathon, you were at that. And he's like, yeah, but that was different because we weren't dating then. Like, I was trying to get you, so I was willing to do it, but now that I have you, I don't want to do that stuff anymore. And ultimately, like, he does show up to the dinner, but then he's a jerk the whole time, and he's just such a bad boyfriend. And he also like tries to pressure her into having sex, and yeah, he was just a terrible boyfriend with such a chip on his shoulder. I hated them together, and I hated the way she treated Dean because she was into Jess. And also, I don't have them, but the girl Jess is dating in order to get Rory jealous, he is such an a-hole to that poor girl. So yeah, did not like him at all initially. It's not until later on. Also, when she's dating Logan and he comes to visit her and he's like, I know you better than everyone else, Rory. Like, what are you doing with your life? This isn't who you are. Claiming you know her better than anybody, like, you haven't seen her in years. You treated her like crap when you guys were together, and now you show up in her life again claiming you know her better than everybody, and then you tell her off saying she's, a loser and not doing anything with her life. Which, yeah, Rory, should have been doing more in that moment. But nonetheless, Jess, I was not a fan of him up until like season 6 or 7 when she goes to see him and he's written a book and he's, part of this new collective of publishers or whatever and artists in New York City. And then, of course, in A Year in the Life. So I think he is the one she is destined to be with. So on one hand, I want to say they're a perfect match, even though the caveat being that when he was a teenager, he was a rude a-hole and a punk and he treated Rory terribly. So perfect match once he has matured and grown, I guess, essentially. And then we have TJ and Liz. I'm going to say they seem happy. We do see some other ups and downs. Still, they are like supporting characters, so we don't see a ton. So I'm just going to say they seem happy. Yeah. Oh, man. Professor Flemming or whatever, who dates Paris, he is like the number one toxic person there is because he was a huge pervert. He's like in his 60s, pushing 70, dating 18 and 19-year-old girls. It does not get any more disgusting from that. So I should have had a whole new level just for him for how gross he is. And the fact that he wooed Paris and then she treated Jamie horribly because she was falling in love for this creepy old man. It's just so disgusting. And I forget what happens. Do they break up or does he die? He ends up at the hospital, but now I can't remember exactly what happens. Anyway, that was so gross, so disgusting. He is disgusting. Kirk and Lulu, they seem happy. We honestly don't see much of Lulu. I love Kirk. I love his character and his quirkiness and how weird he is. And I specifically, I mean, there's so many Kirk moments I could mention, but I love when he has a cat and just, I think it's one of the Thanksgiving episodes. So that his running joke with this cat he owns, whom he names Kirk. Yeah, that was hilarious. And he has so many funny moments throughout this show. Lulu, yeah, we don't see much with him. They have a little drama when he wants to break up with her, but then Luke convinces him, like, are you crazy? Don't break up with her. But for the most part, they get together, zero drama, they're happy, and we don't really see too much of them. Oh, and then Rory and Paul, the guy in A Year in the Life who she keeps forgetting to break up with, she keeps forgetting he exists, toxic on Rory's part. Like, she treats him terrible. And clearly he has issues if he stays in a relationship with someone who clearly doesn't care about him. She does not prioritize him. She doesn't seem interested in him. Everybody, she introduces him to like her whole family, but they all find him just very forgettable. And she herself, she finds him so forgettable, she keeps forgetting to break up with him, which I get was supposed to be a running gag. But that relationship was toxic for how poorly she treated him. And then Paris and Doyle, I'm going to say they're a perfect match, even though in A Year in the Life they're getting divorced because he becomes this hotshot screenwriter. So in some ways, I guess I should bump it down to they can make it work because they're a perfect match up until A Year in the Life. So I'm kind of sad and annoyed that they made them get a divorce. Like, why? They could have written in the show that they're happily together. Why did they have to write that they get a divorce? But for the most part, I do love them together. Again, he embraces Paris and her intensity. And he supports her and she supports him. And then, yeah, when she wants to break up with him because she's trying to decide where to go for like her master's or whatever, and she breaks up with him being like, I can't have you influence my decision. But he's just like, hey, like, I love you. And I want to be with you. And wherever you decide to go, we can make it work. And I will be there for you. I'll come with you. And they both realize how much they love each other, basically, and that they don't need to break up and that they will make it work, which is why they go and they can make it work. And yeah, that wraps it up for my ranking of the Gilmore Girls relationships. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. But thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe and comment your thoughts down below. Obviously, the hot debate is which guy was the best for Rory, Jess, Dean, or Logan. Based on this, I've given Jess the highest rating, but that is purely based on who he becomes. When he was a teenager, he was terrible and I hated him. So it's not until he becomes a mature adult that I finally think he and Rory could be a good match. Which Rory, obviously, she has her issues too, right? So plenty of people have made videos about Rory. So with some things, I think people are too harsh because it's like, come on, she was a teenager, she was a college kid. It's not unreasonable to take a semester off, and yeah, she's still the boat, but you know, I could make a whole video getting into it myself if I wanted to. But in some ways, I think people give her too hard of a time. However, in A Year in the Life, she's like 32 years old, sleeping with a married man, an engaged man, sorry. And that's just not okay. So anyway, yeah, I'm currently reading Lauren Graham's memoir, so I will do another Gilmore Girls related video once I finish that. But thank you so much for watching. And again, comment your thoughts down below. And this is my bunny Ringo who is joining me for this video. He's just so sweet and so cute. So yeah, anyway, we both say bye and thank you for watching. And Alexis Bledel is the actress who plays Rory Gilmore. So if you want more Alexis Bledel content, I covered The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, which she stars in. So I will link to my first book versus movie for that, for the first movie. But I also have covered the Sanket movie as well. So go ahead and watch both of those.